Okay, so welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
So I know Michelle kind of gave your official title, but I'd be curious just to start by hearing, how do you describe what you do in terms of, like, in your own particular orientation?
Well, I feel like if you can't describe your job to like a third grader or your mother, you failed. And for many years I failed at this. I work at Salesforce, like what is that? What's the cloud? So it's kind of difficult to explain. And so 4 years ago, so I started, just kind of give you background. So I've been with Salesforce as a whole for, it's going on my 10th year. And I started off in IT, and then I transitioned to our tech ops. My degree is in computer science. And about 4 years ago, I was asked to come into the Salesforce.org, our philanthropic part of Salesforce. And I was like, okay, now how do I describe what I do? I barely know what I'm doing. You know, how do I describe this to people? So now what I say to people is I get to give away millions of dollars to nonprofit organizations and help change the state of the world. What do you do? Throw it back on you. So I think people understand that. And then usually most people go, well, can I get money? So then I'm like, I got to work on a different angle on that. I'm not like making it rain all over the place. But yeah, no, I love what I do. And that's kind of how I describe it.
And so you grew up in the Bay Area.
San Francisco.
What were some of the influences that inspired you to go into this work from your early days? Were there people or other supporters or leaders that inspired you? How did you navigate your particular path?
I believe that my mentors started off as my parents, and I believe that modeling starts at home, and you may not have people, and in the community. And so I was fortunate enough to have a father who was in tech and a self-made engineer, a mother who was an executive assistant, and she managed secretaries back in the day, and she was kind of like the office manager for the secretaries. And the school I went to, I had to take the one California bus all the way down into the financial district in San Francisco. And I remember getting off the bus and seeing all of the bright, shiny office buildings, and it was great. And she would send me over to McDonald's to get a snack. And I would go into her office, and her boss, who was the CEO, was always so welcoming and would speak to me, and people in the office would speak to me. So what I knew was, one day I'm going to work in downtown San Francisco, and I'm going to be the boss of something. Not sure what. Of something. I was
in a big shiny office.
In a big shiny office building. Now we have 1 million of them. So that's, my parents really inspired me, whether they knew it or not. My father purchased my first, my parents are separated, and so when I got to see my dad, it was a pretty big deal. And so my father bought my first computer, and that was an Apple computer, like the round back, and it was, still remember it, it was like my best friend. I was on that thing forever. And I just felt so fortunate to be able to have this machine that was so new and, progressive, ahead of its time. My mom was still typing in DOS. And so,
wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I do know DOS commands. But, it was kind of like my parents who kind of were very influential for me. And they really stressed the value of my education. I was kind of a knucklehead all throughout high school. My mother says that the worst mistake she ever made was letting me pick my high school. And I went from a very small, controlled environment to a crazy big high school where you could pick your schedule and do all of that. And I had a lot of fun. And so right after, I remember my father, right after high school and into my working experience, told me, you can burn I was kind of crazy. I was partying, trying to work, trying to go to school. I was trying to do a little bit of everything. And he just really stressed the value for me of focusing and deciding what I wanted to do. And I remember he said something like, sweetheart, you only have so long to burn the candle at both ends. Eventually, you're going to burn out. And he's like, burn the candle at both ends now for something that's going to help you in the future. And he said, do you want to be 30? This is probably when I was 21, 22. Do you want to be 30 and still trying to figure out what you want to do? Don't you want to own nice things and be able to travel and make good financial decisions? And something about that conversation has just stuck with me throughout my life. And I got focused and disciplined, and it was like just a conversation, one conversation that changed it. And then I've had wonderful mentors. I started working very early, so I've had bosses who've just taken a personal interest in me. And then my switch in Salesforce from the for-profit to the nonprofit side was through one of my mentors, Suzanne DiBianca, who was the president of the Salesforce Foundation. And she was someone who had watched my career, and I just would meet with her throughout the years. We would do coffee or lunch, maybe once a quarter, twice a year, whenever we had time. But she just heard me grow, and I remember having a conversation with her about a leadership exercise I did. And it's this exercise where you take these playing cards, and the words are like growth, transform, success, results, da-da-da-da, And we're like with the top, I was with my peers, so maybe they were senior directors or vice presidents at the time. And we had to come back and discuss these cards in this 8-person team. And everybody went, and their cards were the ones I described, and mine were love, service, family. So I was like, I think I'm in the wrong company. And so I was so embarrassed. But the great thing is that small group of us stayed together and we talked about it. We're all kind of at a table going through transition. I just happened to be with people who were transitioning and thinking the same way I was thinking. They still had the aggressive words though. But I remember one of them encouraged me to go meet with Suzanne. And I remember having lunch with Suzanne right after, and I think she held that conversation in her head, and a couple years later, she was, inviting me to come work for her.
Cool. And so how do you, I know we talked about this on the phone when we spoke, but how do you see the leader in today's, like what are some of the qualities that you have learned that you try to at least embody as a leader, overseeing teams and doing the outreach in the community?
I think leadership has many different forms. There is the results, and there's that side of leadership. I'll share a story with you. Sure. I'm good with stories. I was at an executive meeting this February, and it was our all-company, our all-manager meeting. So it's our top X hundred, managers in the room. And I was giving a presentation. And this meeting was broadcast to all of our employees. And so here I am giving a presentation about a nonprofit organization called Astrid, and their mission is to connect people who have chronic illnesses with employers who have flexibility. And that's what the whole platform does. Well, there was a gentleman and a coworker in the room who helped bring this platform to life with his best friend who had cancer, and thought of this whole idea. You can practice and practice to give a presentation. I'd practiced that presentation for probably about 2 weeks. And when I was walking in my neighborhood or in my home, it wasn't as powerful as when I was in the room delivering it, all the eyes looking at me, knowing how much it meant to some of our employees who had worked on it. And as I started speaking, the emotion started welling up in me. And I was at that point of lump in the throat tears. And so I actually made a joke. I made a joke in the moment, like, okay, I placed tissues like right over there. I will be making a beeline. If you see me walking this way, that's a tissue grab. As I'm trying to compose myself. And I remember after that presentation, I felt like I had failed. Because
you had emotions.
I had emotion.
And sadness.
I was vulnerable. I was authentic. I almost cried. They're going to think of me as the woo-woo cry girl now, And so, and so I was like, I failed. I literally was like, I need to quit. I need to find another job. Oh my goodness. You go to catastrophizing. I awfulize the entire situation. I didn't even consider all the emails that I got from employees saying, thank you. How do I participate? How can I join in? I have a chronic illness. Can you help me? Can you mentor my employee who has, I got all this love, but yet it was that I was battling what I thought I knew about leadership and the leader that I'm becoming. And I want a balance of both. My team and I went through a rough patch last year. I was kind of down. I'd lost my sparkle. And my team was like, get your sparkle back, lady. and so we have this keyword now, and it's sweet potato. And
Like a safe word or keyword?
It's our safe word. So sweet potato means, and for anybody on the team, because they know I like sweet potato fries, like it's all good. And so it's like my happy place, right? And so, so sweet potato is, I'll give you a sweet potato moment. I had an employee who wants to move. She's based in our San Francisco office, and she wants to move to Bend, Oregon, because she's more chill there, you know. And her husband she thinks it'll be best for her husband and her daughter. So she comes into my office, and she's like, you know, and she was like, sweet potato moment, and I'm like, okay, I want to move. I'm like, all right. So we had that conversation. So that's the type of leader that I want to be, one who balances, you know, the drive for being, you know, for growth and results, because I do ultimately have a mission. My mission is to serve nonprofit organizations and to, you know, be responsible for the millions of dollars that come our way. But I also want to be authentic and compassionate, and not only with my employees, but with the people that we're serving.
And that vulnerability you experienced in that talk wasn't actually a sign of weakness. Actually, a lot of people responded to that as something that they connected with. And
some won't. Some people, I'm sure, were like, oh my God, you know, like, I'm uncomfortable. But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right.
So I know that one of the things at Salesforce is mindfulness, because your CEO is very into it and wants mindfulness rooms in all the offices. And I know Jack Hornfield has been going and doing things with you. So could you say a little bit of your experience about, like, as a leader, kind of cultivating that inner side?
Sure. So Mark has been very instrumental in bringing mindfulness into Salesforce. And I love the exercise that Scott led us in. Jack has led us, Mark's leadership team, in a mindfulness practice at our, like, a small leadership gathering. So we're all like, close your eyes, you know? Are you sure? He's like, close your eyes, get comfortable. And people are like, you know, they're like so closed off. He's like, relax, we're gonna be here for a while. And we're there for like an hour at least, right? So you're like, it was weird. You know, it was cool for me, but I was like, people are so uptight. I can feel their uptight energy. But we had pillows, and it was great. And I've been in a room way bigger than this, where Mark has led the entire management team, like 800 people in a mindfulness practice. And I think that, you know, and we have mindfulness rooms on every other floor where you can go in and just take a moment. For me, having that permission to take that time at work has been huge, because I've been doing, I call it quiet time, before I knew what it was. You know, I had a mentor who said, take 30 minutes of quiet time every single morning, every day of your life. Before you start the day, that's what you do. And so I've been doing that for the last 12 years. And I didn't really talk about it because I didn't really know what it was. It's something
you didn't know it was a thing.
I didn't know it was a thing. It was before it was like a thing, and you know. And so when Mark brought that to Salesforce a few years back, I was like, oh my gosh, that's cool. And yet and still, I was telling a friend, or my partner here, that I didn't know and feel comfortable with even going in those rooms at first. I thought people were gonna think I was sleeping, and that's bad.
Yeah.
Bad. And so now,
The loser room.
That's like, yeah, you know, you need a nap, you need a little time out, or you're just gonna go sleep, you should be working, this is not productive time. It's probably the most productive time I have. Now I have like an eye patch and lavender and earplugs. I go in there, it's like a retreat. And I'm like, if people are in there, I'm like super, like, one of my team was in there, she was one of my interns, and now she's a full-time employee. I was walking past the room, and she's on a conference call back there, and I could hear super loud. I was like, that is not a conference room. Go use my office. It's just, okay. So I'm really protective of that space, because I feel like people need the opportunity to unplug when they're at work.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that Mark is giving us permission, and then once he gives permission, then it kind of trickles down. It takes a while. I mean,
totally.
it's stressy. I work in a stressy environment. You guys will probably work in, Tanya calls it angsty environments. And so it's like, how do you take that time out for yourself during the day? And I think my practice helps me in the morning. I can connect to that during the day and little moments that I have.
Beautiful. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is there's a lot of conversation, particularly in the tech world, about how we get more diversity, more women, more people of color within the tech leadership world. And it feels like finally there's this intention around that. And I know you've worked your way up through that world. Do you have thoughts on things that we should be considering or the questions we should be asking, or how do we support kind of more diversity in our leadership?
I think that it starts with examining your practices, hiring practices, interview practices, promotion practices within your corporate culture. We can't continue to hire people who look like us, talk like us, dress like us, go to the same school as us, you know, all of that like pedigree stuff that is comfortable and familiar is actually a blocker for some people. I was at a conference recently where Daniel from Starbucks was talking about, he gave a talk, and he was talking about informational interviews. And someone messaged him on LinkedIn saying, what's an informational interview? You know, or I was at our higher ed summit, and I was on a panel, and one of my panelists is in education, higher education, and he said one of his mentors was nervous about filling out a college application because one of the questions was, what is your permanent address? How many of you have moved in your lifetime, right? Right? All of us, right? Most of us, right? And so when people move around, they don't understand the concept of like, I don't have a permanent address. So like looking at our questions, you know, on our applications, looking at questions when we're interviewing people, I think is a great start. And having people come in and talking about unconscious bias and how to eliminate that, and also calling people on it. I love that companies like Starbucks and Amex are starting to look at relaxing the degree requirement. 20 years ago, you didn't need a degree to change a copier. Now you do, you know, or to install toner and those are, I mean, I think there are jobs that even in my department don't require a degree, you know? So I may hire an intern, I vet them, and I employ them, right? So I think looking at organizations who are looking to build that next generation of talent from different pathways are a really good pipeline for companies who want to explore this.
Great. Okay. And how do you see, like in the long game of your life, what is it that you feel like is the strongest motivation? I know you're happy at Salesforce now and you love giving away money, not to necessarily everybody here. I need to ask you for money.
No money for you, no money for you. It's not Oprah over here.
But that general sense of giving back, do you feel like that's part of like your life theme, or how would you define kind of your life work and life theme as best you can?
Like, what do I want my legacy to be? How do I want to be remembered? Like that.
What is it the deeper driving motivation force?
I think I think I'm a do-gooder at heart. I definitely love helping people, and I always have. I used to get in trouble for helping too much. I remember on my report card, one of my report cards says, Ebony is too empathetic. She needs to da-da-da-da. And I was like, why is this a bad thing? 4th grade, 5th grade. But I get really attached to people, and I hate seeing people suffer. And so that's my motivation, is I really do want to help make this world a better place. And I know one person alone can't do that. Yeah. You can start, but I want to encourage and motivate others. And so that is kind of what I want to be known for. I want to be known as someone who has like a heart of service, and someone who just loves and enjoys giving back, and who does it with a sparkle and with a smile.
I like the sparkle. We have about a minute left. Is there anything we have not talked about that you would like to touch on?
No, I feel good.
And what about sparkle? How is sparkle?
Look at my team. What is sparkle?
Yeah, sparkle seems to be a magic word for you.
It is.
It just resonates.
I don't know. It's just a part of my personality that makes me feel good, that makes me feel authentic. I know when I don't have my sparkle, I'm not having. So I was in the elevator yesterday with someone. It was end of day, and he said, "Ebony, how are you doing?" I said, "I'm excellent." And he was like, "You never hear people say they're excellent." He was like, "Wow," taken aback by the fact that I said I was excellent. I was like, one word, excellent. Okay. And he's like, "Usually people say they're fine or they're good." And I was like, "No, fundamentally all is well. I'm alive, I'm breathing." Yeah. I just lost a dear friend 2 days ago, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm alive.
Yeah.
You know, I have great memories, and I want that sparkle to be with me, because I realize when I have it, I can pass it on to someone.
Right.
You know, when someone is up and they're smiling, I'm looking at you guys smiling at me back, right? If I was, you know, like afraid and timid, you guys would be awkward too, right? So I feel like that's something I can give, you know, to other people. So it's important for me to keep it.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you for your sparkle and for your work.
Pleasure. Thank you.